Hi everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. I think Miriam has joined us, our speaker. So I just want to make sure, Miriam, if you can hear us, and if you need to share your screen during your presentation, let me know so I can give you access.
Hello?
Can you hear us, Miriam?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So let's wait maybe 1 minute before we start, just so that more people can join us. I see some people waiting in the waiting room. So give it a minute
Okay.
and you can
Yeah,
begin.
sure.
Yeah. Do you need
Um,
your
can you
screen?
see me? Because I can't see me.
I think we only see a gray screen
Yeah, I can
for
see
you
that.
right now.
Quite weird. I'm trying to fix my camera. In the meantime, how much time? When are we starting first?
We can give it a few minutes for you. So if you want to log out and try to log back
Yeah,
in, that works.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna try to do that. And also, I wanted to ask you, how long is our session today?
Yeah, you'll speak for maybe let's say 30 minutes and then we'll have a short Q&A. Is that good?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna be back. Okay.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, thank you everyone for your patience. While Miriam tries to join us again, I'd like to just remind everyone if you want to let us know where you're calling in from, that would be great. And the Kumi website, we're still working on it. It's been down for a few weeks, so I know people haven't been able to access actions. So we'll make sure to, during the session, I'll try to make sure to send some links in the chat as well for some actions that we think would be good for people to look into. And let's give it maybe a few more minutes and wait for Miriam to join. And once Miriam joins, we can begin the session. I see some new folks joining, so I just want to remind everyone that we're waiting for Miriam to join us again because she had some issues with her video camera not working. So we're giving her a few minutes just to join. While we are waiting for Miriam to reconnect, I wanted to share an event that is happening in person in Europe. So if you're based in Europe, this might be something of an opportunity for you. So it's a conference by Sibiu Kairos, Netherlands, and they're hosting a conference from July 25th to 27th in the Netherlands, focused on Palestinian theology and radical European solidarity. So if you would like to register for this and you're based in Europe, there's a link here that I'll send in the chat just for everyone to know. And this is being supported by Sabeel as well as Bethlehem Bible College. And this is a chance for Christians from Europe to show up together in solidarity and learn how to take action and learn more about Palestinian theology. So this is a really great opportunity for everyone. Okay, I think Miriam has joined us again, so let's see if her camera works now. Can you hear us, Miriam?
I can. Can you give me like a half a minute? Let me just try another
Yes, of course.
half.
Take your time. Take your time. No worries. I think we're able to see you now, Miriam. So, okay, awesome. And you can hear us, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay. So yeah, let's begin the
Hey,
session.
great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here, or being here with us. I'll introduce Kumi now first, and then the layout, just so uh, everyone is aware. So again, thank you everyone for being with us for our latest Kumi Now online gathering. I will send some links for Kumi and Sabil during the session. For now, I would like to introduce Miriam Jaja, who is giving her time today to speak with us, and we're very honored that you're here with us today. To introduce Miriam, Miriam is the General Manager of the Arab Group for the Protection of Nature. She holds a BA in International Development from Leeds, a graduate diploma in economics, and a MSc in Development Economics from SOAS, University of London. Miriam has written papers on the subjects of food security, environment, and land tenure, and has facilitated international and Arab civil society delegations on international platforms to address the right to food and environmental protection and accountability in the context of war and occupation. And Miriam will speak to us today about green resistance and the struggle for food sovereignty. She'll speak for about 30 minutes, and we'll have some Q&A time with her. And if we have some time after and Miriam leaves, we can engage in some action, nonviolent actions together. So thank you, Miriam. And I think you should have screen share now, so feel free to begin.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, everybody, for giving us your time, and thank you for Sabil and for you for organizing this. I'm wondering if you can see my screen.
I don't see your screen right now. I don't know if others can. So maybe try to share again. I can make sure.
All right, let me try again.
Mm.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to speak today about what we call our green resistance movement. It started in Palestine, and we extended our work to Jordan and most recently to Lebanon. I'm going to speak about why we're doing what we're doing, what the impact is, what the concept of food sovereignty is, if you've never heard about it. And if you have any questions later, please do ask me. So first of all, we're called APN, the Arab Group for the Protection of Nature. We were founded during the Second Intifada in Palestine, under the slogan of "They uproot one, we plant 10." We started our green resistance movement to replant and cultivate and rehabilitate Palestinian farmland. At that point, there was a very clear, systematic and aggressive war on Palestinian agriculture and farmers, and mainly old indigenous olive trees. At that point, maybe a tree was being uprooted per minute. And a group of us decided that we don't want to stay still and watch all of this devastation happening, because it's not just an attack on the environment and agriculture. It's an attack on people's rootedness in Palestine, because farming is the most important agricultural sector. So we started this green resistance campaign, and then we expanded the concept to embrace what we call food sovereignty, and I'm going to come to that. So we work on agricultural rehabilitation. We also work on many international policy platforms, be them UN organizations or intergovernmental organizations. And then at the other end, we have built a big and massive network of solidarity groups across the world, who, together we started fighting for our, causes, our rights, and one of the main things that we work on, which is the right to food, and protecting people's ability to control their inputs of production. So I don't know if any of you has heard of the concept of food sovereignty. So food sovereignty has many principles, but the most essential principle is people's ability to cultivate their own food and control the inputs of production of food. And it really differs to food security, which is promoted by many international organizations. Food security revolves around availability of food. So you have enough calories on your table at the end of the day for you and your family to feed yourselves. It doesn't matter who is feeding you, if you're able to cultivate and produce your own food or not. And the important aspect of food sovereignty is that it gives you political sovereignty, because you should be producing your own food. And for instance, we see now what's happening in Gaza, where food is being weaponized completely because people are not being able to cultivate their own food, and they're depending on food imports and food aid. Okay. So let's move on to talk about food sovereignty in the context of Palestine. So of course, the most famous two Zionist myths are that Palestine is a land without a people for a people without a land. But at the same time, Palestinians neglected their lands and caused its desertification. And these are two myths that are contradictory. You can't be a non-existent group of people, but at the same time neglect your land. In reality, Palestine has always had one of the richest and most powerful agricultural sectors in the region. And these trees, the indigenous trees of Palestine, some of them 5,000, 6,000 years old, really narrate the story of Palestinians and their attachment to the land. And some of the sectors that, the farming sectors in Palestine were so, they were so advanced. For instance, in the orange sector, 23% of the world's oranges came from Palestine in the year 1939. Of course, nowadays, and after the colonization of Palestine, the orange industry was completely occupied and usurped and stolen. And now you see in your markets the Jaffa oranges, which were developed as an orange species by Palestinian farmers. But let's move into what's happening now also in the West Bank. The majority of Israeli attacks on the Palestinian economy are targeted to the agricultural sector. And we see this systematically across the year, but more during the harvest season. So when people can't come to harvest the fruits of their labor, they're being attacked, their trees are being chopped. So it's also a very difficult, let's say, psychological warfare happening to the Palestinians. 70% of the attacks on the agricultural sector are against Palestinian trees. So Israel in 14 years, and that's just 14 years, between the years 2000 and the year 2014, they have uprooted, burnt around 3 million trees in Palestine. But now, if we count what's happening in Gaza, where 80% of the agricultural land was completely flattened, and that's the minimum, we know that the number rises to tens of millions of trees across Palestine. And why is that? So one, of course, is to erase Palestine's history. And many of the trees that are being uprooted, old indigenous trees, are replanted in new settlements. So settlements would look older. And some of them are sold in international auctions because they're really expensive. Of course, they're destroying all these trees to build infrastructure for the settlements. Also to hit and to dismantle the farming, the livelihoods of the Palestinians. So over 100,000 families in Palestine rely on the olive sector as their main source of income. Another reason is to weaponize food, as we see now in Gaza. The first sector that was completely bombarded and demolished were the food production sites, the farms, the water wells, the solar panels, anything that is really important, or the fundamentals of an agricultural sector. And also to create a market space for the colonizers themselves. So until they reach to a point where they have displaced all Palestinians, they want the Palestinians to serve them economically. So 70% of Palestinians' food imports or agricultural imports come from Israel. And that's a country, or Palestine is a country that was self-sufficient at some point, is slowly becoming more and more dependent on agricultural produce. But even the Palestinian produce, which is meant for export, has to go through the Israelis. So what the Israelis do, they take the Palestinian produce and they use it for their own exports, and then they export it. So they buy it very cheaply from the Palestinians, and then they gain any economic additions. So here you can see some pictures of before and after. You can see how the settlements are always, massacring huge amounts of trees, because they're always on mountain tops, inside forests, on farmland. So the interesting bit is that Israel has promoted or created this environmentally friendly, very green and progressive image globally, and they made sure to do that. And this is what we call greenwashing and greenwashing land theft. So Israel has created over 530 nature reserves across historic Palestine. So a lot of them are in the West Bank, areas which Palestinians cannot enter even if they are in the West Bank. And then you have many in the lands that have later become the state, the colonial state of Israel, or Israel. So but the problem with these reserves is that they are concealing old and erased indigenous Palestinian villages. So we know that during the Nakba, over 500 Palestinian villages were completely demolished in order to create Israel. Hundreds of them, and at least there's a documented 182 erased Palestinian villages, lie under the new forests planted by the Israelis, specifically by the Jewish National Fund. So the Jewish National Fund started all these planting and reforestation campaigns since the 1940s and the 50s, and they were planting non-indigenous species in Palestine. So European species, European pines, European cypress, and all of these trees are invasive to the land. And that's why we witness lots of fires happening in Israel since that date. For instance, you don't witness these types of fires in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, in all of the surrounding countries, and you don't even see them in the West Bank itself. It's because Israel has planted vast amounts of forests that are not native to the land of Palestine. And when these forests and these fires happen, the most, the truth of the land reveals. So the terracing, the indigenous Palestinian terracing and farming is shown. So you can see in front of you this picture of a huge forest Israeli forest that was burnt down, and then all of the very old indigenous farming, terracing in Palestine is revealed. So, so greenwashing is a very big thing, and we as an environmental group, we are very cautious about projects that try to, maintain the status quo through these environmentally, this environmental mask, which in reality tries to conceal lots of environmental violations by the occupier. So apart from this, Israel systematically poisons and degrades Palestinian lands, and they have many agrochemical factories closing down in Israel and opening up through incentives in the West Bank. They throw their sewage and their, all their waste into Palestinian water and Palestinian land. And what is most, horrific for us was when we sent a fact-finding mission to realize that these factories open up or their function when the wind is going towards Palestinian villages, but when the wind is going to Israeli villages, these factories shut down. So, such as the Gishuri agrochemical company in the West Bank, and a lot of them produce chemicals that are globally banned because they cause climate change and they're environmentally unfriendly. But nobody can enter these factories, not even UN experts. They don't allow anybody to go in. So what we try to do is to go in the surrounding areas, and you can see the pictures, and to document what's happening, and to try to take some soil samples and to send them to laboratories to make sure to understand what's been happening there. Of course, they have large-scale herbicide spraying, not only in Gaza and the West Bank, but also in Jordan, and I will speak about this later. And also, they've been stealing soil, whether it is sand from Gaza or fertile soil, and bringing it back in. Now, moving on to water. Water is a completely different and different warfare also. Water is the source of life, and since the colonization of Palestine, Israel has dominated 85% of Palestinian groundwater and 100% of overground water, so the Jordan River, and they also act as if they own rainwater. So Palestinians cannot build legally water harvesting wells. They cannot collect the rain unless they get permission from Israel. And the permits are so difficult to get. Another issue is that they cannot put solar panels. And you hear a lot of organizations trying to support Palestinians through solar panels, and then they get confiscated. So all this, preaching that happens to Palestinians about, adapting to climate change and, giving them ideas of concentrating on building resilience and all of these things are actually barred by Israel. What's really has been really, had a very, very bad effect on the entire region is Israel's diversion of the sources of water of the Jordan River into the desert to make the desert bloom. And that's another fallacy, or there's another, let's say, a greenwashing project. So they say we are greening the desert, but in reality, they're stealing the water of the entire region to create farmland on lands that are not meant to be farmland, they're deserts. So what's happening is that the Jordan River has dried up. I don't know if any of you has been to Jordan, to the baptism sites in Jordan, and you saw the very little water there that smells like sewage, because Israel is dumping their sewage into that. And it's very, very offensive for us here, and especially the people, the people who go and get baptized in this sort of water, to see what has happened. And now the Dead Sea is becoming smaller and smaller because Israel is diverting this water. And you probably have also heard that Israel has expanded now its occupation to larger parts of Syria and larger parts of Lebanon. And these parts are very essential because they are the sources of water also for the Jordan River. So the Litani River in the south of Lebanon and all the sources of water in Syria. So that's why we always say Israel is a settler colonial state that is eager to expand. So how do we resist as a grassroots movement? We started our Million Tree campaign in the year 2000, right during the Second Intifada. We gathered ourselves and we started what we called the Million Tree campaign. And you can see the logo of our campaign, which our volunteers have produced 25 years ago. It's a connection between the trees and the old indigenous trees and the communities themselves. And when Israel is trying to uproot those trees, they're trying to uproot us. And when we're planting these trees back, we're planting people back. And we finished our first million fruit tree across Palestine, in the entirety of Palestine, historic Palestine, in the year 2008. And we started our second million tree, and we finished that. And around 2 months ago, we announced that we finished our third million fruit trees campaign across Palestine. Of course, we did that to first protect land, and not a lot of people know, but Israel is using many land laws they're like foraging land laws, old land laws, to be able to confiscate land. So one of the land laws they're using is an old Ottoman law that was meant to encourage cultivation in the region. So it said that if the land is not cultivated for 3 consecutive years, we're able to confiscate it. So what they're doing in Palestine is they're destroying and burning these lands and making it very difficult for Palestinians to recultivate and then confiscate these lands under these laws. And 40% of the land that has been confiscated in the West Bank was confiscated using this law. And that's why when we cultivate those lands, we are resisting this type of land confiscation. Of course, we're reviving livelihoods, we are enhancing people's food sovereignty and trying to rehabilitate the environment. Our campaign has reached around 34,000 Palestinian farmers. And we didn't stop at planting trees. We've built around 100 water harvesting wells. We've put irrigation systems. We've worked with sheep, with anything that can bring food sovereignty to Palestinians. There's some of the pictures in Bethlehem, in Jericho, in Hebron, of our tree planting campaigns in Khalil. These are the water harvesting systems that we do. This is in Bethlehem, and grapes is a main crop in Bethlehem. This is to show you how planting is resistance, cultivation, and as an indigenous nation, that the ties to the land are, undeniable. So this is how we resist. It's one of them, historic ways of resistance in Palestine, even before our creation as APN. Some of the trees we've planted twice, 3 times, and they uproot, but we plant again. They fear our trees. Here you can see where we've planted them across Palestine. Even inside the green line, we've planted our trees. You can see Gaza, we've planted around 500,000 fruit trees in Gaza. We are aware that most of these trees have been completely flattened, destroyed. But we have pledged to plant them again after this genocide is over. I want to tell you a little bit about our work in Gaza. So in Gaza, every time Israel launches a very devastating war, we come in to rehabilitate the entire agricultural system. So it's not only trees. So they did that. They did a very, destructive war in 2006, 2009, 14, 21, and we always come in with a lot of work to do in the agriculture sector. Irrigation networks, greenhouses, fishing nets with the fisheries, fishing boats, beehives, birds, anything that could help people feed themselves. But this genocide was different. First, let's speak a little bit about what's happening, what has happened before the latest genocide. Since the year 2007, of course, you probably know, Gaza was in an open-air prison. Israelis have put a calorie counter on the border to make sure that not enough food is going in. So people have felt hungry, but they're not dying of hunger. And this is a statement below by one of the Israeli spokespersons when he says, we have to make them much thinner, but not enough to die. The idea is to put them on a diet. So this is something that happened before the start of this genocide. After the genocide, the purpose is not to make them hungry. The purpose is to displace them or cause their death. And thus you see the attack of humanitarian workers, humanitarian work, destruction of the agricultural sector, the entire port, the seaport. And now there's a very clear famine, although international organizations do not want to state and announce a famine. So they say everything, but they don't want to say the word famine. There's an ecocide in Gaza. It's really, you know, we always speak about human suffering, and that's the most important. But also there's an ecocide happening. We're talking about over 7 times the Hiroshima bomb being dropped on Gaza. The amount of toxic waste, the debris, everything is unprecedented. At the same time, farmers in Gaza maintained their agriculture because this was their lifeline. Humanitarian aid is not entering, and imports are not also being able to enter, so they should maintain their cultivation of food. So we started our campaign in March. We said we're gonna try to revive as much as possible of their local food system, but not by planting trees, because trees need 3 years to cultivate or to bear fruit. So we started planting vegetable crops. So very quick, fast, productive vegetable crops across 1,000 dunams, which I think is 100 hectares, where you, depending on where you're from, I think it's that in hectare, I'm not sure, 1,000 dunams. But for 600 farmers, we've cultivated all sorts of crops, tomatoes, cucumbers, aubergine, potatoes, corn. Of course, the aim was not only vegetable farms. So we did also greenhouses and water wells, and we worked with fisheries as well. And we worked across Gaza from the north to the south. You can see our tomatoes and our produce right in the middle of the genocide. People were cultivating with drones on top of their heads. Of course, a lot of farmers got attacked, but that was their only possible way to get food. We were able to, these are the numbers. So we also worked apart from fishing nets with fisheries, there's also poultry, chicken that produce eggs so people can get some protein. And we we called it the Revive Gaza's Farmland campaign. So if anybody wants to support us or to spread this campaign around, this is the link, and maybe later I can share it with you. So if we move now to the Green Caravan in Jordan, and I'm not going to speak a lot about Jordan and Lebanon, just to give you an understanding of the regional aspect of this. So in Jordan we work, and we have also planted 250,000 fruit trees. And Jordan is a place which is a buffer for Palestine. It's a continuation of the land. And Jordan was once a place that was food sufficient at some point and used to produce most of its land. And now it has become one of the most reliant on food aid. So 97% of its food is imported. And why is that? One is we went through an economic policy. We got loans from the World Bank and the IMF. I don't know if you've heard of these institutions. They give loans with lots of, very painful conditions that really sacrificed the agricultural sector in Jordan. And I'm not going to go into the details of what they did, but another element of why Jordan's agriculture is suffering is also because of Israel. These are fires that happen every year or 2 years in Jordanian farmland, where Israel burns down hundreds and hundreds of dunams of really old trees, fruit trees, and really there's little media coverage or attention or compensation to these farmers. So we also come in and we try to cultivate these lands, and we compensate these farmers who speak like Palestinian farmers, We've worked with 13,000 farmers in Palestine, and these are some of the photos of before and after some projects in Jordan. So, and last month we started our Together for Lebanon's Olives campaign, because Israelis have been attacking olive orchards in the south of Lebanon, attacking them so systematically that millions of trees have already burnt down in Lebanon. They've also stolen olive trees, and they've documented themselves stealing, all indigenous olive trees and running through the border towards where they are. So we started this campaign, and we did it with a lot of actors in Lebanon, and we did 2 planting activities in Lebanon. I think these issues about technology are not really important, but it's really important just to mention that there's a few slides about technology, but also to be also very wary about like modern tech companies that work in the agricultural sector, who are also, in a marriage with Israel's army. So these big tech companies like Albit and Impressed are through their drone system and their techs, they're promoting agriculture, but at the same time being used for precision attacking by the Israeli army. So it's very important to always look at these tech companies that work in the environmental and in the agricultural sector. We work a lot on advocacy and trying to enter negotiations and exposing what Israel is doing all the time. We have a lot of, accreditations. If you have any questions about these platforms, please do let me know. Of course, we use these platforms not to be molded into their, concepts and their narrative, but to be able to reveal what's happening. And it's really important to try to reveal the environmental and the food dimensions of this war. And that's it. So just to give a few recommendations, it's really important to build people's food sovereignty in Palestine, because these people are on the front line of this colonial project. And of course, we should work on, accountability measures and, pushing for boycotting every complicit company. But at the same time, it's important to make sure that the Palestinian people are able to continue their daily lives, because their existence in Palestine is actually a resistance. So, and always to use, I'm gonna just conclude with this sentence to say, it's really important to always use the right narrative and the right concepts. It's not a Palestinian-Israeli conflict or war. This is settler colonialism. It's a genocide. This is a famine. It's really important to always use the right terminology and the right narrative. It didn't start in 1967. It didn't start in October 7th. It started with this colonial project over 100 years ago. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Since we're short on time, if anyone has questions, please put it in the chat rather than raising your hand so I can relay it. The first question that someone wanted to know is whether you have, and maybe this can be a more general question because they asked specifically if you had links to Bethlehem University and Tent of Nations, but how do you work with maybe local organizations in the West Bank that focus on maybe similar issues? Like what types of projects have you done? Any type of projects in the past with them?
We've worked with a lot of organizations, maybe over 50 to 60 organizations, universities, municipalities, women unions, farmer unions, workers unions, all sorts of organizations. And our office is based in Bethlehem. So the area, we have a lot of, coverage. Is one of the main ones is actually in Bethlehem.
Thank you, Miriam. And it does seem like, I mean, the world is turning, I think you mentioned the importance of using frameworks like settler colonialism. And I think you're one of the few speakers that also gave us this regional understanding of how settler colonialism is working regionally. And so I'm curious, maybe you can expand on, based on what you talked about, even mentioning, Jordan in the 1980s going towards this neoliberalism, taking on, international funds and such. what steps do you think is needed for food sovereignty to thrive, and also for, economies of the people who were oppressed to begin to thrive long after occupation and genocide ends? I wonder, if you have any thoughts about that based on kind of the lessons that we can see from history that have gone wrong.
So if we want to talk about the struggle to food sovereignty, of course it's not only in Palestine or even in places that are occupied. So we have, maybe old classic colonialism is over, but neocolonialism is still alive and happening and more entrenched into all the other countries. And basically, the purpose is to create markets for richer countries to be able to what we call food dumping, and what's more dangerous is the political implications that come with it. So you are completely deprived of your independence, and this is what happened to Jordan. So, and this is what is expected of Jordan, is just to beg for food aid. And once the borders are closed, or somebody changes his mind in giving food aid to Jordan, Jordan is punished. And the first step to go on about it is to try to support smallholder farmers through inputs of production, seeds, land, water, and try to really raise awareness on the importance of local food systems. So as much as localize as much as you can, and do not rely on the monopoly of huge corporations that, for instance, they've monopolized the production of seeds. So what they did was, I skipped one of my PowerPoint presentation slides because I didn't want to take a lot of time. But one of the most beautiful miracles of creation, I believe, is seeds, because seeds, you can keep on reproducing and producing themselves through the vegetables. So you can eat the tomato and be able to cultivate that seed again. And this is what we're trying to train and do in Gaza. But what they did was they altered seeds. They created something called genetically modified seeds. And for instance, they take the genes from a fish or from an animal and they add it to a plant seed in order to make these seeds, let's say, look better. But at the same time, they call them terminator seeds. You cannot use them once, twice, three times. They die. So they build this reliance on these big companies. So you keep on purchasing seeds one time every single season, rather than protecting your indigenous seeds that can give you, a forever source of food production. So that is one. Another issue, which is really important, it is what they did with land. So land before was not a commodity. Land was for everybody's use. And private property was not something that this region knew. But with the British colonization, they enforced what we call the commodification or the privatization of land. And they made big companies purchase land from wherever they are. So they don't have to be in this country. They can be sitting over a computer, purchasing very cheap land in another country, and where small farmers from locally cannot purchase their own land, and they cannot, have access to that. There's so many things that they've done. The interest rates, the very high interest rates on loans. Before colonization, it was forbidden to put interest rates on loans and then take the lands of the people who cannot pay back their loans. There are many things that happened, but now they're becoming more worse with new organizations such as the World Bank and the IMF. And it's not only Jordan, it's each and every country in this region, and most of the ones in the global south who've taken these loans. And so food sovereignty is our ability to go back to how we were before. Of course, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be exchanging beautiful things among nations. Of course not. There are things that there is very, it's something very nice to exchange, the products from each nation. but not to use it to control and to dominate and to starve people like what's happening now so evidently and in Gaza.
Thank you, Miriam. And I think your discussion on seeds is good for these two questions. Someone asked, where do you get the tree seedlings so you can replace, the olive trees? So I'm curious about your process with that. And then what is the success rate of transplanting these olive trees?
Sure. First, I wanted to just stress on the importance of seeds and the fact that Israel, since its start of this recent war, has forbidden one little seed from entering Gaza, even when the borders were open and some of the humanitarian aid was going in. They wouldn't allow one single tomato seed to come in. And how do we know that? It's because we started our campaign and we started to collect seeds from all over the region, trying to send it to Gaza. Because we are very, very stubborn people, and because we're a grassroots independent organization, we were able to bring our seeds in, millions of seeds in, despite Israeli disapproval. But after Rafah completely closed and we couldn't bring our seeds in, we started purchasing them from local nurseries. We did a mapping of everything that exists in Gaza, and we started using these seeds to pre-plant. Okay, now that's about the vegetable seeds in Gaza. But if we talk about the trees in the overall of historic Palestine, we're using Palestinian nurseries. So Palestinian olives, we're using indigenous species. It's not only olives, so it's figs, stone fruits, citrus, anything that is suitable for that environment and that farmers have experience with. We see what they've lost in terms of trees. We plant in Area C, which many organizations do not want to plant in, although it's considered the West Bank. For instance, the World Bank and USAID, when it functioned in Palestine, it never came close to Area C, which is under the Oslo Accords meant to be part of the West Bank. But it gives you clarity about where this is going. And that's why we believe that, of course, the stopping of US aid to a lot of organizations in the region might be painful on the short run, but we do believe that it comes with liberation. We do not want, conditional aid coming in. We want solidarity work and aid. We want genuine solidarity. So and then this is about the seedlings that we're using. We do a vast mapping across the areas that are threatened by confiscation next to the wall, the apartheid wall. Which trees have been burnt down, and these are the lands that we try to cultivate. And a lot of times we cultivate for women farmers because they've lost their husbands, and it's a big variety of people we plant with.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions here, so if anyone has last minute questions, please put it in the chat. But for maybe a good question just to end, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about the campaign that international citizens can be involved in with APN. But how can the international community support food sovereignty and the movement for food sovereignty in Palestine? How do they, maybe there might be sources you recommend for people to begin to move their funds, to support smaller businesses. So yeah, I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
So if you would like to support our work, because this is because we don't take foreign state funding, I don't know if I have mentioned that. This has been a policy since we were formed. Right when we realized that we were being ordered where to plant and what to plant, and if we are able to plant, we decided not to take state funding. And this has really been the reason why we were able to cultivate in Gaza during the genocide. No other organization was able to do that, not a governmental one, not a UN organization, not even a Palestinian solidarity organization was able to cultivate in Gaza during this war. And it all goes back to our policy of independence and our financial sovereignty, let's say. So if you are wanting to support our work, I think the most essential work at the moment is to support Gaza's local food system. So I'll write you our website down here, or maybe you can share it with the group. But this is our website, and let me write it down. And this is our website for the Gaza campaign. And then you can support directly with planting vegetable seedlings to combat the famine in Gaza.
Thank you so
You
much.
can also plant trees across Palestine and get certificates of thanks. You can give them to people. I think the people who are able to donate, it is great. But people who aren't able to donate can help us a lot through outreach. So just by spreading the news and explaining to people that there's you know, a campaign like that is happening would be extremely useful.
Thank you so much, Miriam. I think that's a great way to end the session and have that be a call to action for people to support your campaigns and the important work that you do, not just in Palestine, but throughout the whole region. And thank you again so much for taking the time to speak with us and educate our audience on this really important issue. And we're going to spend the next 10 minutes to do this action and maybe other actions as well. But if you need to go, feel free to go. But again, I just want to thank you. And there's also a bunch of comments thanking you for your work.
Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, just send them my way. I'm happy to answer anything or to, if there are any clarifications. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. So we'll turn now to actions that we can do. So the first action that Miriam so graciously sent us with the website apnature.org. And I'll send the specific link also for the campaign to revive Gaza's farmland. And so this can be the first action. Maybe if you're able to click on the link and just visit it and see if you can donate some money to help with their grassroots campaigns in regards to this. In the meantime, I'll wait a few minutes before sending any other actions, but if you have campaigns or updates happening in your own community, please feel free to also put it in the chat and I'll make sure to relay it. So let's have this be our first action for the first few minutes and then we can, I'll turn to a few other actions we can do. Okay, another action I just put, this was sent last week as well, but I just wanted to make sure everyone has a chance to read this petition and sign it. But this is the Women's Voice for Gaza, a Palestinian Christian call for justice and life. And so this was written by Palestinian Christian women across historic Palestine who have asked they asked the international community to sign this petition if you're able. So I've put the link to this and it's a pretty simple action you can take if you haven't done so already. I'll also send a link that I sent earlier in the meeting, but it's the Cairo Sabeel conference from July 25th to July 27th. And just to clarify that it's for European Christians, but also non-European citizens can also apply. And you just have to apply by, I think there's a deadline in June, and it should tell you that if you visit the link cairosabeel.nl/conference that I've put in the chat. Diane also shared a event which I'll read. I think this is outside of Parliament in the UK. So this is Red Line for Palestine, Arms Embargo and Sanctions Now. And they're asking people to wear red and surround Parliament on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, the 4th of June, 11:30. So that's a collective action if you're in the UK that you can engage in and participate in. There's also, I don't know if anyone has heard of the news about the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, but they have also asked the community, the international community, to keep watch. They have a tracker actually, but basically this is a ship of civilians, several international civilians, including Greta Thunberg, who are going to challenge the embargo or the siege on Gaza. So they're going and sailing to Gaza, and so they've sent a letter actually to the Israeli government, warning them that any action against their ship is a breach of international law, of course. They've been attacked before in the past, so you know, there's a high risk that they might be attacked again, but they have asked the international community to keep tabs, and also I think there might be a way to also support their campaign in some way. So let me send everyone that link as well if you want to read about the Gaza Freedom Flotilla and what they're doing. But they have aid on their ship, and they're trying to bring some aid into Gaza. Okay, I've linked the Freedom Flotilla, and then there's also the tracker, where you can track the boat's journey, for safety, accountability, and solidarity. So, that's one thing you can do. Kathy has also shared, thank you, Kathy, for an interfaith call to action. So you can visit interfaithforpalestine.com, which she also linked. So there's a bunch of actions that are in the chat now. I hope that's helpful for people. And again, I'll try to send back the APN link so that you can also visit APN's Gaza campaign. So I hope these actions were helpful for everyone. I'll stay on for a few more minutes in case you need to click and save any of the links. For next week, we'll have Hana Thams, who will be speaking. He's a instructor on Dakke, and he runs or helps run a Dakke education center. So he'll talk about art and resistance. And so that will be our presentation for next week. But I hope that this presentation was also helpful to everyone. And I hope to see everyone next week. Thank you so much for being with us and showing up every week and engaging in action with us. We really appreciate it.